Good evening. Tonight I just want to talk a little bit about the fact that all of us collectively into this country have today been forced into this bizarro world existence against our will. Whether you're aware of this or not, this is happening, okay? It's called the insidious plot of daylight savings time, which comes along twice a year for absolutely no good reason and disrupts our complete physical existence. Creates havoc, fucks up the economy. There's just no excuse for it. Somebody out there, I suppose, is making money on it. I sure as hell don't know who. Um, I can't imagine anyone would mourn the demise of such a hideous tradition. The other bizarro world is one created by Google. This is definitely done with intention. There's a nefarious reason. I can't imagine what it is. This ain't the government. The government doesn't do this kind of shit. But what it is, if you look at what you're watching right now, if you think about it, you'll notice something. You'll notice that this Stratocaster, for example, is left-handed. If you take a look at my shirt, that doesn't say tune it. It says T and nut. Why? Why, Google? Who told you that this was a good idea over there for your Android phone design? You don't do it with the pictures. So clearly you're doing it to try and provoke some kind of unrest or unease in people's minds. That's the only thing I can think of. Why? No clue. No clue. But I think Congress should investigate. And that's all I want to say about that. We're very fortunate this evening. I wanted to do this next piece, but I was expecting a couple different visitors. And it's going to be rather long. And I didn't want to have it interrupted with callers because, as you know, all of my presentations are live, uncensored, unscripted, unedited, and unrehearsed. Absolutely. That is rule number one. If and wherever possible, I give you the absolute cold reading. Now, this story here, I haven't read since I was a teenager. And I'm not going to tell you how long that is, but let's suffice it to say it was quite a long time ago. Um, and I don't think I remember most of the details, but I do remember the story itself quite well because it is one of those stories that once it touches you, you're done. You're part of that world. So this is written by who I consider to be one of the greatest of all American authors. And I think one who's not that popularly known. He wrote in a genre called sword and sorcery. It was popular back in the 1930s. Robert E. Howard is the writer. He lived in Cross Plains, Texas. He was born in Piastre, Texas. He died by suicide at the age of 30. He shot himself in the head because he couldn't cope with the fact that his mother was about to die. And the loss to the world of literature was just incalculable. But the thing he's, of course, most famous for is creating the character of Conan the Barbarian, immortalized in film by the great Arnold Schwarzenegger. There were about 12 volumes in the Conan saga. And vast majority of the stories were written by Howard himself. They were also, many of them were written out of fragments or partial stories that Howard left with his lawyer. And they were completed to flesh out the gaps in the saga. I think there's one or two novels that were written by other writers totally that were, it was just one of those things. It's another book written by somebody else who's an absolutely amazing writer about the character created by Robert E. Howard. And I mean, God, there's so many stories I could read you that are not Conan. And you'll probably get a few of those, at least I hope so, if I can keep doing this long enough. But I think this one, I guess all I can say about it, it's this one, okay? There's one other that I'm going to have sent to me because I can't find that script either, that is probably as deep within me as this one. But this one, I mean, and the reason this one is so special is because I am, once again, not only the protagonist, but as an actor, I also get to play the part of at least one of the other characters in the story. And I have met and been completely captivated by, owned by, here, let me show you this. Now, that's Conan there with the sword in the front. And those two other cats are the ice giants. They are the brothers of, just a minute, I got to get to the spot in the book now, right? Getting close, I'm at the end. I shouldn't be, no, that's not it either. Hang on. Oh, damn it, I hate it when my timing gets blown like this. But I'm hoping that for you that enhances the experience, because I'm just trying to, as I said, I'm trying to do something that no one else has ever done in terms of unrehearsed, intimate, one-on-one live performance. And it's going to be up to you and to my posterity to judge whether or not I've succeeded in that. Anyway, without further ado, let me tell you the story of Atali, the frost giant's daughter. She has such effect on a man as no man can resist, does Atali. Fed up with civilization and its magic, Conan rides back to his native Samaria. After a month or two of wenching and drinking, however, he grows restless enough to join his old friends, the Aesir, in a raid into Vanaheim. The clangor of sword and axe had died away. The shouting of the slaughter was hushed. Silence lay on the red-stained snow. The bleak, pale sun that glittered so blindingly from the ice fields and the snow-covered plains struck sheens of silver from rent corselet and broken blade, where the dead lay as they had fallen. The nerveless hand yet gripped the broken hilt, helmeted heads drawn back in their death throes, tilted red beards and golden beards grimly upward, as if in a last invocation to Ymir, the frost giant, god of a warrior race. Across the reddened drifts and the mail-clad forms, two figures glared at each other. In all that utter desolation, they alone moved. The frosty sky was over them. The white, illimitable plain around them, the dead men at their feet. Slowly, through the corpses they came, as ghosts might come to a tryst, through the shambles of a dead world. In the brooding silence, they stood face to face. Both were tall men, built powerfully as tigers. The shields were gone, their corselets battered and dented. blood dried on their mail. Their swords were stained red. Their horned helmets showed marks of fierce strokes. One was beardless and black-maned. The locks and beard of the other were as red as the blood on the sunlit snow. "Man," said the latter, "tell me your name so that my brothers in Vanaheim may know who was the last of Wulfhere's band to fall before the sword of Heimdall." "Not in Vanaheim," growled the black-haired warrior, "but in Valhalla shall you tell your brothers that you met Conan of Chimmeria." Heimdall roared and leaped, his sword flashing in a deadly arc. As the singing blade crashed on his helmet, shivering into bits of blue fire, Conan staggered, and his vision was filled with red sparks. But as he reeled, he thrust with all the power of his broad shoulders behind the blade. The sharp point tore through the glass scales and bones and heart, and the red-haired warrior died at Conan's feet. Cimmerian stood upright, trailing his sword, a sudden sick weariness assailing him. The glare of the sun on the snow cut his eyes like a knife, and the sky seemed shrunken and strangely apart. He turned away from the trampled expanse where yellow-bearded warriors lay locked with red-haired slayers in the embrace of death. A few steps he took, and the glare of the snowfields was suddenly dimmed. A rushing wave of blindness engulfed him, and he sank down into the snow, supporting himself on one mailed arm and seeking to shake the blindness out of his eyes. As a lion might shake his mane. A silvery laugh cut through his dizziness, and his sight slowly cleared. He looked up. There was a strangeness about all the landscape that he could not place or define, an unfamiliar tinge to earth and sky. But he did not think long of this. Before him, swaying like a sapling in the wind, stood a woman. To his dazed eyes, her body was like ivory. And save for a light veil of gossamer, she was naked as the day. Her slender feet were whiter than the snow they spurned. She laughed down at the bewildered warrior with a laughter that was sweeter than the rippling of silvery fountains and poisonous with cruel mockery. "Who are you?" asked the Cimmerian. "Whence come you?" "What matter?" Her voice was more musical than a silver-stringed harp, but edged with cruelty. "Call up your men," said he, grasping his sword. "Though my strength fail me, yet they shall not take me alive. I see that you are of the Vanir." "Have I said so?" Her gaze
His gaze went again to her unruly locks, which at first glance he had thought to be red. Now he saw that they were neither red nor yellow, but a glorious compound of both colors. He gazed, spellbound. Her hair was like elfin gold. The sun struck it so dazzlingly that he could scarcely bear to look upon it. Her eyes were likewise neither wholly blue nor wholly gray, but of shifting colors and dancing lights and clouds of colors he could not have named. She calls him. Her full red lips smiled, and from her slender feet to the blinding crown of her billowy hair, her ivory body was as perfect as the dream of a god. Conan's pulse hammered in his temples. "I cannot tell," said he, "whether you are of the Vanaheim and mine enemy, or of Asgard and my friend. Far have I wandered, but a woman like you I have never seen. Your locks blind me with their brightness. Never have I seen such hair, not even among the fairest daughters of the Aesir. Baimer, who are you to swear by Ymir?" She mocked. "What know you of the gods of ice and snow, you who have come up from the south to adventure among an alien people?" "By the dark gods of my own race," he cried in anger, "though I am not of the golden-haired Aesir, none has been more forward in swordplay. This day I have seen 80 men fall, and I alone have survived the field where Wolfir's reavers met the wolves of Bragi. Tell me, woman, have you seen the flash of mail out across the snow plains, or seen armed men moving upon the ice?" "I have seen the hoarfrost glittering in the sun," she answered. "I have heard the wind whispering across the everlasting snows." He shook his head with a sigh. "Njord should have come up with us before the battle joined. I fear he and his fighting men have been ambushed. Wolfir and his warriors lie dead. I had thought there was no village within many leagues of this spot, for the war carried us far, but you cannot have come a great distance over these snows, naked as you are. Lead me to your tribe, if you are of Asgard, for I am faint with blows and the weariness of strife." "My village is further than you can walk, Conan of Cimmeria," she laughed. Spreading her arms wide, she swayed before him, her golden head killing sensuously, and her scintillant eyes half shadowed beneath their long silken lashes. "Am I not beautiful, O man?" "Like dawn running naked on the snows," he muttered, his eyes burning like those of a wolf. "Then why do you not rise and follow me? Who is the strong warrior who falls down before me? She chanted in maddening mockery. Lie down and die in the snow with the other fools, Conan of the black hair. You cannot follow where I would lead. With an oath, the Cimmerian heaved himself up on his feet, his blue eyes blazing. His dark, scarred face contorted. Rage shook his soul, but desire for the taunting figure before him hammered at his temples and drove his wild blood fiercely through his veins. Passion fierce as physical agony flooded his whole being, so that earth and sky swam red through his dizzy gaze. In the madness that swept upon him, weariness and faintness were swept away. He spoke no word as he sheathed his bloody sword and dove at her, fingers spread to grip her soft flesh. With a shriek of laughter, she leaped back and ran, laughing at him over her white shoulder. With a low growl, Conan followed. He'd forgotten the fight, forgotten the male warriors who lay in their blood, forgotten Njord and the reavers who failed to reach the battle. He thought only of the slender white shape, which seemed to float rather than run before him. Out across the blinding white plain the chase led. The trampled red field fell out of sight behind him, but still Conan kept on with the silent tenacity of his race. His mailed feet broke through the frozen crust. He sank deep in drifts and forged through them by sheer brute strength. But the girl danced across the snow. Light as a feather floating on a pool, her naked feet barely left their imprint on the hoarfrost that overlaid the crust. Despite the fire in his veins, the cold bit through the warrior's mail and fur-lined tunic, but the girl in her gossamer veil ran as lightly and as gaily as if she danced through the palms and rose gardens of Poitain. On and on she led, and Conan followed. Black curses drooled through the Cimmerian's parched lips. The great veins in his temples swelled and throbbed. His teeth gnashed. "You cannot escape me," he roared. "Lead me into a trap and I'll pile the heads of your kinsmen at your feet. Hide from me, and I'll tear the mountains apart to find you. I'll follow you to hell itself." Foam flew from the barbarian's lips as her maddening laughter floated back to him. Farther and farther into the waste she led him. As the hours passed and the sun slid down its long slant to the horizon, the land changed. The wide plains gave way to low hills, marching upward in broken ranges. Far to the north, he caught a glimpse of towering mountains. Their eternal snows blue in the distance, and pink in the rays of the blood-red setting sun. In the darkling skies above them shone the flaring rays of the aurora. They spread fanwise into the sky, frosty blades of cold, flaming light, changing in color, growing and brightening. Above him, the skies glowed and crackled with strange lights and gleams. The snow shone weirdly, and now frosty blue, now icy crimson, now cold silver. Through a shimmering, icy realm of enchantment, Conan plunged doggedly onward in a crystalline maze where the only reality was the white body dancing across the glittering snow. Beyond his reach, ever beyond his reach. He did not wonder at the strangeness of it all, not even when two gigantic figures rose up to bar his way. The scales of their mail were white with hoarfrost, their helmets and axes covered with ice. Snow sprinkled their locks. In their beards were spikes of icicles, and their eyes were as cold as the lights that streamed above them. "Brothers!" cried the girl, dancing between them. "Look who follows! I have brought you a man to slay. Take his heart, that we may lay it smoking upon our father's board." The giants answered with roars like the grinding of icebergs on a frozen shore. They heaved up their axes, shining in the starlight. As the maddened Cimmerian hurled himself upon them, a frosty blade flashed before his eyes, blinding him with its brightness. And he gave back a terrible stroke that sheared through his foe's leg at the knee. With a groan, the victim fell, and at the same instant Conan was dashed into the snow, his left shoulder numb from a glancing blow of the survivor's axe, from which the Cimmerian's mail had barely saved his life. Conan saw the remaining giant looming high above him like a colossus carved of ice, etched against the coldly glowing sky. The axe fell, to sink through the snow and deep into the frozen earth as Conan hurled himself aside and leaped to his feet. The giant roared and wrenched his axe free, but even as he did, Conan's sword sang down. The giant's knees bent, and he sank slowly into the snow, which turned crimson with the blood that gushed from his half-severed neck. Conan wheeled to see the girl standing a short distance away, staring at him in wide-eyed horror. All the mockery gone from her face, he cried out fiercely, and drops of blood flew from his sword as his hand shook in the intensity of his passion. "Call the rest of your brothers!" he cried. "I'll give their hearts to the wolves! You cannot escape me!" With a cry of fright, she turned and ran fleetly. She did not laugh now, nor mock him over her white shoulder. She ran as for her life, although he strained every nerve and thew until his temples were like to burst and the snow swam red to his gaze. She drew away from him, dwindling in the witch fire of the skies, and so she was a figure no bigger than a child, then a dancing white flame on the snow, then a dim blur in the distance. But, grinding his teeth until the blood started from his gums, Conan reeled on until he saw the blur grow to a dancing white flame, and the flame to a figure as big as a child, and then she was running less than 100 paces ahead of him. Slowly, foot by foot, the space narrowed. She was running with effort now, her golden locks blowing free. He heard the quick panting of her breath and saw the flash of fear in the look she cast over her white shoulder. The grim endurance of the barbarian served him well. The speed ebbed from her flashing white legs. She reeled in her gait. In Conan's untamed soul leapt up the fires of hell she had so well fanned. With an inhuman roar, he closed in on her just as she wheeled with a haunting cry and flung out her arms to fend him off. His sword fell into the snow as he crushed her to him. Her lithe body bent backwards as she fought with desperate frenzy in his iron arms. Her golden hair blew about his face, blinding him with its sheen. The feel of her slender body twisting in his mailed arms drove him to blinder madness. His strong fingers sank deep into her smooth flesh. Flesh as cold as ice. It was as if he embraced not a woman of human flesh and blood, but a woman of flaming ice. She rides her golden head aside, striving to avoid the fierce kisses that bruised her red lips. "You are cold as the snows," he mumbled dazedly. "I'll warm you with the fire of my own blood." With a scream and a desperate wrench, she slipped from his arms, leaving her single gossamer garment in his grasp. She sprang back and faced him, her golden locks in wild disarray, her white bosom heaving, her beautiful eyes blazing with terror. For an instant, he stood frozen. Awed by her terrible beauty, as she stood naked against the snows. And in that instant, she flung her arms toward the lights that glowed in the skies and cried out in a voice that would ring in Conan's ears forever after. "Ymir, oh my father, save me!" Conan was leaping forward, arms spread wide to seize her, when, with a crack like the breaking of a mountain of ice, the whole sky leaped into icy fire. The girl's ivory body was suddenly enveloped in a cold blue flame so blinding that the Cimmerian held up his hands to shield his eyes. From the intolerable blaze. For a fleeting instant, skies and snowy hills were bathed in crackling white flames, blue darts of icy light and frozen crimson fires. Then Conan staggered and cried out. The girl was gone. The glowing snow lay empty and bare, high above his head. The witch lights played in a frosty sky gone mad. Among the distant blue mountains, there sounded a rolling thunder, as of a gigantic war chariot rushing behind steeds whose frantic hoofs struck lightning from the snows and echoes from the skies. Then the aurora, the snow-clad hills, and the blazing heavens reeled drunkenly to Conan's sight. and thousands of fireballs burst with showers of sparks. The sky itself became a titanic wheel. Which rained stars as it spun. Under his feet, the snowy hills heaved up like a wave, and the Cimmerian crumpled into the snows to lie motionless. In a cold, dark universe whose sun was extinguished eons ago, Conan felt the movement of life, alien and unguessed. An earthquake had him in its grip and was shaking him to and fro, at the same time chafing his hands and feet, until he yelled in pain and fury and groped for his sword. "He's coming to, Horsa," said a voice. "Hasten. We must rub the frost out of his limbs if he's ever to wield sword again." "He won't open his left hand," growled another. "He's clutching something." Conan opened his eyes, stared into the bearded faces that bent over him. He was surrounded by tall, golden-haired warriors in mail and furs. "Conan," said one, "you live." "By Cromnjord," gasped the Cimmerian, "am I alive? Or are we all dead? And in Valhalla?" "We live," grunted the Yaz, busy over Conan's half-frozen feet. "We had to fight our way through an ambush, or we'd come up with you before the battle was joined. The corpses were scarce, cold when we came upon the field. We did not find you among the dead, so we followed your spoor. In Ymir's name, Conan, why did you wander off into the wastes of the north? We had followed your tracks in the snow for hours. Had a blizzard come up and hidden them, we had never found you by Ymir." "Swear not so often by Ymir," muttered a warrior uneasily, glancing at the distant mountains. "This is his land. And legends say the god bides among yonder peaks." "I saw a woman," Conan answered hazily. "We met Bragi's men in the plains. I know not how long we fought. I alone lived. I was dizzy and faint. The land lay like a dream before me. Only now do all things seem natural and familiar. The woman came and taunted me. She was beautiful as a frozen flame of hell. A strange madness fell upon me when I looked at her. So I forgot all else in the world. I followed her. Did you not find her tracks? Or the giants in icy mail that I slew? Njord shook his head. We found only your tracks in the snow, Conan. Then it may be that I am mad, said Conan dazedly. Yet you yourself are no more real to me than was the golden-locked wench who fled naked across the snows before me. Yet from under my very hands, she vanished in icy flame. He is delirious, whispered a warrior. Not so, cried an older man whose eyes were wild and weird. It was Atali, the daughter of Ymir, the frost giant. To fields of the dead she comes and shows herself to the dying. Myself, when I am a boy, I saw her. When I lay half slain on the bloody field of Wolfraven. I saw her walk among the dead in the snows, her naked body gleaming like ivory, and her golden hair unbearably bright in the moonlight. I lay and howled like a dying dog because I could not crawl after her. She lures men from stricken fields into the wastelands to be slain by her brothers, the ice giants, who lay men's red hearts smoking on Ymir's board. The Cimmerian has seen Atali, the frost giant's daughter. Bah! Grunted Horsa. Old Gorm's mind was touched in his youth by a sword cut on the head. Conan was delirious from the fury of the battle. Look, how his helmet is dented. Any of those blows might have addled his brain. It was an hallucination he followed into the wastes. He is from the south. What does he know of Atali? You speak truth. Perhaps. Muttered Conan. It was all strange and weird. By crumb. He broke off, glaring at the object still clenched, still dangled from his left fist. A wisp of gossamer. It was never spun from human distaff. I have seen her. I have touched Atali, the frost giant's daughter. I have been with her. She is my queen. She owns my soul, and I will follow her to the gates of hell, or to have my heart lain smoking by the ice giants on their father's board. But I bless the day I found her.